Caroline Tompkins, and I currently work for the Carpenter Hospice, and we are working with the City of Burlington to achieve the Compassionate City Charter. This is the second video. The first video was quickly highlighting the charter, just giving you a bit more information about it and where to find some resources. So this video will cover this fact sheet in more detail, which is a resource that we have created when we are interacting with our stakeholders, and we are more than willing to share with other communities or cities who are trying to achieve the charter, as we found it very successful in being able to engage with our stakeholders. So the purpose of this video is to go through it and how to frame it for the different types of stakeholders, 3 typical stakeholders you're going to interact with, and how you should maybe change some subtle words, and just so that you're able to engage better with the stakeholders and hopefully increase stakeholder buy-in. So just quickly, here's the front of the 3C fact sheet, our version. It goes through quickly what the charter is, the 12 social changes. Here they are here. We have some photos. On the back we have some statistics, federal, provincial, local, as well as the cost provincially. And then we have the 4 questions on the back that I fill in each time once I'm getting ready to go out and present to a stakeholder. And for me, the whole purpose of this sheet is I've done it in color. I've made things pop off. I actually printed on stock paper in hopes that it'll decrease their chances of crumpling it up and throwing it out. So, a couple things to look at. You have 3 typical stakeholders that we found that we engage with. So you have political stakeholders, you have medical stakeholders, and then you have community stakeholders. So churches, community groups. You're going to have way more community stakeholders than the first 2, but the first 2 are still very important. So, our political stakeholders were the first people we went out and met with and engaged. So, but when dealing with political stakeholders, it's very important because here, the first 3, it talks about policy or guidance. So, politicians are going to understand a policy document, and even medical staff are going to understand having a policy document, but the general, just a good community organization, a church, a business, a mom and pop shop business, they hear the word policy, it makes them nervous. It feels like you're trying to tell them what to do. And often, they've never really done policy work themselves, so it's intimidating, it's overwhelming, they just don't want anything to do with it. So for that instance, I would take out the word policy and I would use the word guidance. And that's actually something I learned from a policy professor at Queen's. So this is one of the areas that you really need to make sure you tailor each time when you are meeting with a stakeholder. Remembering, am I meeting with a politician or am I meeting with a community group? And which word should I keep? The other piece on the back certainly is these 4 questions. So this question here is more of a federal question, and certainly with politicians, you want to speak to any federal documents that exist because that helps them, it helps create that buy-in. The Way Forward framework is our most recent political or federal document for palliative care, and so there are 7 aims that were created. And 5th on the list is the creation of a caring community. So perfect, the charter fits into that. So certainly this is always I always highlight this. No matter what organization I'm working with, I highlight so that they understand palliative care is of interest to the federal government. And here's how you can help out with that. The next thing is, how will this change palliative care? Once again, it depends on who you're interacting with. For us, one of the interesting pieces we often talk about is how the definition of palliative care talks about terminally ill people, but it doesn't really talk about the old and frail, elderly and frail. Like, I think of my grandfather who's 92, doesn't necessarily have a disease, he's just aging. So technically, he wouldn't be entitled to palliative care. So who's taking care of them? He still lives alone, he's been alone for 10 years, and so therefore this is where the charter can come into play. By building community capacity, they're going to help take care of my grandfather, help mow the lawn, shovel the snow, all of those little things, which are still a part of palliative care. How does this relate to current agendas? So certainly whatever the hot topics are in your area at the moment, this is where you can see how the charter can help support it or address it. So for instance, something that's obviously been a topic for us in Canada here was physician assisted dying, which has now been changed to medical assistance in dying. Research says roughly 30% of people will take the prescription, but that's mostly because they're scared of dying. They don't know what their options are. They don't want to be in pain. They don't want to burden their caregivers. So if we do a good job of educating them on palliative care, we help them advance care plan. So we reduce their stress level as much as possible through what can be a very stressful time. Help them get a quality of life. For instance, they're struggling to get to their appointments. Well, maybe we pair up with the local churches who have volunteer drivers and they can drive them to their appointments, right? So it's increasing their quality of life, reducing that burden. So research says is that if we can make sure that they understand what their palliative care options are, pain management, where they can pass away, all that kind of stuff, help them advance care plan, less than 5% will use the service of medical assistance in dying. So, prime example, here's how it relates to current agendas. If we work together to create this charter, which builds palliative care capacity within the community, more people are going to have resources, they're going to have support. Hopefully the caregivers will have less of a burden, which the patients do worry about. Therefore, then they're going to feel more supported, they're going to feel more in control of their process and maybe, less inclined to use that service. Prime example of something that you can speak to. How can you help the Burlington achieve the charter? So that's usually what our question is at the end to that stakeholder. So for instance, when we are meeting with our medical the medical people, we simply, we were just more saying to them, we just want you to be aware of the initiative that's going on. There could be at some point, maybe we'll do some consulting with you because we come across some clinical concerns. And sometimes it's really just to say, you know what, we just want you to be aware of what we're doing. If you happen to come across anything you think would be interested in, could tie in, by all means, please reach out to us. So once again, when using this back side of the sheet, you got to think about who you're interacting with. Am I interacting with the community? Am I interacting with a politician? Community-wise, for instance, churches. We've been interacting with religious groups. They're very nervous about the MAID, so we really highlight that piece in here, showing them that if we work together to create a compassionate city, that we are supporting our residents within the city better, and hopefully less of them will not feel like the only option they have is medical assistance in dying. And then, so what I'm going to do is actually show you the sheet that's going to be posted online that you can make changes to yourself. So here's the sheet. You can insert your logo here. So anywhere that there's yellow is the sections that you can change. There are sections you can't change, and that's because these are the critical pieces that you need to make sure you convey the basic information about the charter, right? Here, I put this in yellow because remember, again, you have to decide whether you're using the policy word or you're using the guidance word. So you'll have to take note and change that. Insert some pictures from your community, something that engages people, pulls them in, helps increase that buy-in. Here, your statistics, so you need to go through and find out what your local statistics are. You can go to Stats Canada in Canada. You can go to Stats Canada and find that information. This cost of end-of-life care came from our Auditor's General Report for Ontario, assuming other provinces will have the same thing. And then in here, once again, this is where you have to put the information that's of interest to your stakeholder. So my suggestion is you really make sure you know who your stakeholder is before you meet with them. Really research them, understand them. In meeting with a politician, what is your politician's, what was their platform, right? Really understand what their areas of interest are and try and find a way to tie it into the charter. Same thing with community groups. Really understand what are their current initiatives. Try and find a way to tie it all into the charter. So you're putting in this information here, you're spinning the charter in a way so that someone says, oh, I see how that ties in with our initiative. An example, the Knights of Columbus approached us recently. Their initiative for the next year is to let no one die alone. How perfect. So when I designed their fact sheet for them, I specifically said, how can you help Burlington achieve the charter? And I actually said, we want to work with you to help no one die alone. Let's work together. This is a compassionate city. So it was perfect. But we took the time to research what the Knights of Columbus was up to before we met with them. Down here, put in your contact information, because once again, you put this on stock paper. Hopefully you're leaving it with whoever you've just met with, and they're going to keep it. So that's how to use the 3C fact sheet. The 3 typical stakeholders you're going to engage with. This will be posted on our website. And remember that there is another video, the first video, that just talks about the charter a little more. If you are looking for any more information, I've also highlighted some documents as well in there for you guys, so you have some resources. Thank you very much. Have a good day.